Hey everybody, welcome back to another Nature's Always Right video. Today I am in Rogersville, Missouri, doing a farm tour with Stacy and Jeremy Hill at Gooseberry Bridge Farm. This is a homestead that brings in quite a bit of income, and this is one of the reasons I really wanted to feature them, besides all the great growing techniques they're using, the great animal raising techniques that they're using. And they're also going to share their journey of how they went from Jeremy working full-time, making really good money in the IT field, how they scaled that back and built up their homestead to fill in the gap of that income, and just kind of how that whole process went for them. I know there's so many people out there that are interested in homesteading, maybe making a little bit of income from a homestead or maybe full-time income from their farm. And this will be a great video to watch and learn from. Here, when did you arrive at this homestead, and how did you kind of come to the conclusion that you and your family need to live off the land?
In 2015, maybe 2016, we made a 5-year plan that we wanted to get out of town. We wanted to raise our kids on some land. We wanted to have animals. We wanted them to have chores, grow up with responsibility. So we basically said in 5 years, in 2020, we wanted to be moved, and that was around 2015.
Yeah.
And then in 2016, we decided to go ahead and start looking at property, and we put an offer in on Labor Day of 2016 and bought the place and have a look at that. Yeah.
What was kind of the first things that you started with when you got to your homestead? What were your first big goals?
We wanted to have a garden, but we had to find it first.
Yeah.
This is an old homestead. So our house was built in 1880.
Wow.
So there was a place where there was a garden already, and we pretty much used winter to make all the
explore,
learn and let everything die back, because it was completely overgrown. This was not a well-maintained property. It was basically the house, and there was a driveway and there were some fences, but there was 7-foot tall weeds in the fences, and it was just like, when we came to look at the place, they brush hogged right up to the house.
The first things that we did were things that we knew would take a long time to reap a harvest off of. So we did plant an orchard. In hindsight, I might have put it somewhere else.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, well, here we are.
You know, we tried with the best of what we knew. We just put in probably about 20 fruit trees, knowing that it would take 5 years to get anything out of them. And true to form, this year is the first year we've really gotten any fruit. We've gotten a decent harvest of pears this year.
Did you have any gardening experience or any farming experience?
We had...
how did you learn, I guess, once you got here?
We had gardening experience in town. We had done a community garden plot for a few years, and then we had a raised bed garden at our house in town. But it was very small compared to this. And we had done canning, and we would buy stuff from the farmer's market in bulk to supplement our little garden.
I took a class when we lived in town from a guy who did a raised bed gardening class. You know, one of the biggest things that we did was we took tidbits from him. We took tidbits that we learned on the internet, trial and error.
Yeah.
We don't subscribe to any single methodology, any person's teachings per se. It's more of a well, this worked for us and this worked for us, let's mush those together.
So just trial and error and figuring out what works for your context and your climate and all of that.
And your goals. You know, a lot of people tell you need to plant this, you need to plant this many of this per person. You know, it comes down to what you like. You know, I was noticing the other day, we're canning tomatoes right now. We don't can whole tomatoes. Everybody says you have to can whole and diced tomatoes and this many of this sauce. We pretty much just do salsa.
We've been doing tomato sauce this year, pre-seasoned.
Because it's what we eat. To me, it should always start with, what are your goals? What does your family eat? What come March, when you really have no food left in the pantry that you grew, do you wish you had more of? Not, what's going to look pretty or what's going to tick a box, but what does your family actually eat? And then back that up into growing.
Green beans this past year, so I'm trying to grow tons more green beans, but it's been the worst green bean year I've ever experienced.
Yeah, we're big. Green beans and squash are our two big ones. So, we overdo those.
Nice. That's a great tip.
Yeah, everybody's all, don't plant too much zucchini. I'm like, let me tell you, there's no such thing.
So right now, we are in your no-till
Yep.
You pick flower garden.
That is right.
So tell me how this idea came about, and why did you choose flowers, and why did you choose no-till too? What made you decide on that?
So as far as why we did flowers, we really sat down and thought, how can we capitalize on this and use it to generate some revenue? Because part of it is, having a homestead is expensive, to get started.
Yeah.
Building shelters for the animals. We were looking at ways to
pay for it.
To try to pay for the farm.
Yeah. Right.
It wasn't really let's use this to make a living initially.
Yeah.
And then it kind of turned into that. The first year we opened was 2020. So when the shutdown started to happen in March of 2020, we were just gearing up for our first season that we planned the year before. Wow. And we thought, oh no, this is going to be awful. We are going to have wasted all of this time and energy and effort, and nobody's going to be able to come.
Didn't do any succession planting that year.
Yeah.
Because we were like, I'm not starting more seeds. Like, what if no one shows up? Because we weren't going to open till the end of June, and we would have had to have been planting every 2 or 3 weeks all through that.
But what happened since all the shutdowns happened, farms were listed as essential and outdoor activities were deemed safe. We ended up getting a lot of people coming out because people were stuck in their houses in town. They had nowhere to go. They had nothing to do. They can't go to the mall. They can't go to the movies. They can't.
Yeah, and flowers make people happy.
Can't go to the swimming pool. So they came out here and picked flowers. You can socially distance. So we had an awesome year our first year, and 2021 was comparable. Yeah. So,
but we could only open 2 days a week because we didn't have
enough flowers.
Yeah, we didn't have enough flowers. We had to open Tuesdays and Saturdays, and that was it. For 2020.
So it was a huge success, very popular. The local community supported it.
Yeah.
And now you've been doing that for 2 years.
Yeah, this is the
third year. But the no-till thing came from the fact that tilling is nearly impossible here. It's just like we have a tractor, we have a big tiller. It doesn't touch the soil. It's rock. And we basically follow the tiller picking up rocks, and it's not worth it. Yeah. And it doesn't actually help anything. I mean, it's just just tilling in the garden the first time, that because it had been done before, because somebody had pulled out the rocks, it set a good stage for us to get started with the no-till stuff. But doing that out here, we knew that wasn't going to work.
All these beds are basically the shovelings from our goat and sheep houses. Okay. So we go get the hay that's been pooped on and peed on, and we laid it out, covered it for the winter. We did that in the fall, and then we planned into that in the spring.
The first year we lay out the beds with string, so we can tell exactly where we need to put it, and we measure it like 8 to 10 inches deep with the sheep, goat, rabbit, whatever. Poupée is what we call it.
Yeah, ready to go compost, basically.
Yeah, basically. Just ready. Yeah, and you have to bring it in by the trailer load, unload all of the houses, and put it out here. And then every year after these flowers are all done, because 99% of this is annuals. So we pull everything out. We have a couple different compost piles. Most of the zinnias, because of the diseases they carry, they go to our chicken yard, and we don't use that compost for anything else. They just grow bugs, and the chickens make it disappear.
When the flower season's over, we'll come through and we will cut out all the dead plants because...
and then you cut them off, leave the roots.
Yeah, leave the roots. We'll pull off the weed fabric and then amend that soil with all of the hay, poop, pee, stuff that we shovel out of the animal houses.
And then we leave it for the winter.
Let it snow on it.
Yeah, wrap all the fabric up and put it in storage for the winter. It helps extend its life. We reuse all the landscape staples, and we actually we have this plastic support netting on here, which is designed to be disposable. But since we have to get it off of the plants in order to compost the plants, I roll it all up and use it again. Roll it up on the stakes.
Our biggest things that we try to do, and we almost make a fun game out of it, is we try to reuse everything. We try to use things that were already on the farm. Since this was an old 140-year-old homestead, the barn had a whole lot of old scrap lumber.
We've pretty much recycled all of that, repurposed.
Yeah, how can we reuse things and use things that are not for their intended purpose to try to,
use it for something else.
Like these hoops are just 1 inch PVC, 1 inch PVC.
We also use these hoops to use frost cloth in the winter if there's something planted that we need to cover. We'll plant tulips all in this area, and sometimes we need to cover them.
Yeah, we'll have 5,000 tulips in this area in the spring.
How much do you charge to do U-pick? How do you operate that?
So for the summer flowers that are all like cut and come again, they just keep producing. We do a container. It's about this big. It holds between 50 and 80 stems, and it's $25 to fill it. And we give them the container and the scissors and
give them a little tutorial.
Yeah,
tell
we have
them where to cut the flowers.
Yeah.
Like on zinnias, how to shake to make sure they're ready to go.
Ready.
These are not.
No, those are not ready.
And just set them loose.
And the only thing we've been limiting this summer is sunflowers. The single stem sunflowers that just make one flower and they're done. It depends on how many we have and how busy we are. We just try to make sure everybody gets some.
Mm-hmm. Two to five per purchase.
Mm-hmm. Sunflowers are really popular.
So talking earlier, this is the flower business is what percentage would you say of your homestead income is this?
Yeah, I'd say close to half.
Okay, yeah, close to half is in that. Cool.
Close.
And then the other half, the other big portion of your homestead income is coming from farm tours and teaching people about animals and all of that. So I'd love to go over there and tell us more about that, because I haven't seen that too often where people are doing that.
The other little percentage we have that's regular yearly farm income is garden starts.
Nice.
So since we have the high tunnels and we're starting all the seeds for these flowers, and we also start all the seeds from our garden, we do vegetable garden CSAs.
As a pre-order, so they order all their plants and then we grow them.
And
it works out really well because they're pre-sold. We get the income in February and then they pick up their plants in May.
Yeah, if you're doing market gardening, if you're doing any kind of income off of your farm, it's generally hard to come up with income in the winter months. So being able to sell those and collect all that money in January and February, and then you deliver in May.
And you're already doing the work for yourself anyway.
Smart, I like
water
that.
everything at the same time.
Yeah, if you're going to be growing 50 tomato plants for yourself, why not grow 500 and sell to?
It turns out it's not that much
your
harder.
friends.
Right. Yeah, because it's just efficiency, because you're already doing all these tasks, so why not?
Until you're picking aphids off of every single seedling. Then it's a little bit harder. But
gotta love farming.
Employ some ladybugs, and we got over it. But
yeah, ladybugs and praying mantises are employee of the month.
How are you pre-selling? What are you using?
We have a Google
software
form,
or
just a Google form and it has and I also have a website that lists all the varieties of seeds that I have. So I don't offer things that I don't already grow or have or know that I can do pretty much. So they have the list. They can go to the list and they can pick. It's like a package, like a large garden, and they get 18 plants, or a
backyard garden.
Backyard garden is 9 plants. So it's different sizes, and then they pick what those plants are and put it in the Google form. But lots of people just say, I want 3 tomatoes and 3 peppers, and I want sweet peppers or spicy. They'll be very vague, and then I just fill it in for them. So I grow all these fun heirloom varieties and get people exposed to that by, just they trust my judgment. So I'm like, yes, you will have an awesome garden. Here it is.
A lot of people have never had a tomato that wasn't
wasn't a plain red
Better Boy or whatever.
Right.
So
and we do get requests for those, and I'm like, I'm not growing that stuff. You're gonna have to try this Cherokee Purple. You'll like it.
You'll never go back.
Then nobody's complained. So
yeah, and then it's fun introducing your customers to the new things and blowing their mind about how different it tastes.
Yeah, and I get texts from them with pictures this is awesome. And
because around here at least, your best option to buy that stuff, or most people's option, is they're going to the big box store and buying it from the nursery center, which is coming from a factory somewhere, factory garden.
And the plants are smaller and they cost more.
And they're all hybrid.
Probably not organic.
Yeah.
And we also do flowers as an add-on to that, so people can get cut flowers. They can get some zinnias.
They can get
a
cut flower garden as an add-on.
And
I pick
like that.
varieties that I have extra of, and make sure they get a variety.
And we also do an herb garden add-on, so they can get little 4-packs of cilantro and basil and dill, things like that.
Yeah, I like that you're kind of you're giving them options, but you're kind of guiding them, because so many people are new gardeners and they don't know what do I exactly want. I like how you're organized that. It's smart.
For animals, we try to have multiple purposes for them. The goats and the rabbits are great because the goats are milk goats. The rabbits are all either fiber animals, the French Angora rabbits, or they're meat rabbits. The dual purpose for most of them would be the fertilizer. We really rely on the hay and the poop from all those animals to fertilize both the flower field and our garden, since we don't use any store-bought or synthetic fertilizers.
That's fantastic.
The other thing that we do with the goats and the rabbits specifically is we do farm tours where we allow people to come out and
Do this.
to do this,
Yes.
but learn about animals. You know, most people, they may have gone to, you know, an attraction or something where, okay, you can get down, where they have seen a goat, or they've, you know, maybe seen a bunny or something like that, but they've never gotten to interact with one or be around a farm animal to know that, you know,
Or interact with them in their
He's giving me.
like normal environment.
Yes.
so, you know, our goal is to educate people. It's, you know, it helps us from a revenue standpoint, but it helps educate the public about, you know, what these animals can be used for. And most people don't know that you know, there are different breeds of goats. There are goats that are bred for meat. There are goats that are bred for dairy.
Yes.
We have fainting goats. While they're fun and everybody's seen the YouTube videos, some of our fainting goats are actually some of our best milk producers.
Oh.
So they're actually really good milk goats if you get the right lines. And then we've got Jasmine over here is a La Mancha, and
She's pumping out like a gallon a day.
we're getting about a gallon of milk a day just off of her.
Nice.
From a baby that she had in April. So
And she fed a bottle lamb for us.
yeah, and she adopted
wow.
a lamb.
The other thing we've used the goats for in the past, and it's just not as necessary now because this is all nice and clear, but that's not what this looked like when we got here. This was all rose bushes, the multiflora rose, the really invasive stuff, and poison hemlock, and like just, you couldn't even like see through this area.
We do 3 rotations, so we've got 3 larger pastures here.
Yeah.
I say
Girls.
larger, they're goat size, they're not big pastures, but we rotate those girls 3 weeks on, 6 weeks off. So
I like. Is this kind of the building and the where they
Yeah.
they're protected? That's
Yeah.
in the center, and then you have paddocks
Right.
surrounding.
That's
I
the,
like that.
That's the plan.
Nice.
That,
Yeah.
that barn that's over there is brand new. We just built that, so
Okay.
it's not even connected to the pastures yet. We're just using it for
Yeah.
babies right now.
Nice.
our
And
first
then-
houses are those ones in the middle
Yeah.
there. They're just made out of pallets.
But we
Yeah.
should go look at it because they're good. They
will.
were a good example of how we got started
Yeah.
using things that were free.
Yes.
So they
Yeah.
were
Excellent.
free or
Free
already
pallets,
here.
some old tin we found in the barn. So these are meat rabbits. They can be used for meat. We use them both with our farm tours. Honestly, we use them more for fertilizer than we do for meat. We have butchered and eaten them. We've also used them to supplement dog food.
Yeah.
Because we do have 4 going on 5 livestock guardian dogs. So, you know, the feed bill gets pretty big. So it does help with that on a supplementation standpoint.
Nice.
When we're not raising them in hutches to collect the poop, we've got them in tractors like this. These are 6-foot by 2-foot tractors made out of just PVC and a little bit of
Tin.
tin cut into 2-foot sections. So they've got an enclosed area on one side, a little lid on top, and wire around the outside. And the idea is they're light enough that my kids can lift them and
Yeah.
move them.
Yeah, there's a candle on the side.
There you go. Just drag them to the next.
Yeah. Usually the kids
We
just pick
try
them
to
up.
lift them just
okay.
because
There is
the,
wire in the bottom, so the rabbits can be.
Yeah. If you
so they
don't
can't dig
dig.
out.
We put 2x4 in it so they don't dig, but if you
Oh, I
drag
see
it,
the wire there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's welded wire.
if you drag them, they can
Just
get their
welded
feet stuck in
2x4.
it.
The 1x2.
Does,
1 by 2
1
wire.
2, and then this is 2 by
1 inch
4.
by 2 inch. Versus
Why is
2
this
inch
better?
by 4.
Doesn't let the babies out.
The babies can
It
get
doesn't
out.
let other things
Okay.
in, and it's just sturdier.
I built several of these, and they hold up generally pretty well, but they I mean they do wear out over time. We've used a little bit of scrap lumber to attach the doors. The hardest part about them is just with material prices going up so much this year. 4 10-foot pieces of
Yeah.
PVC.
Yeah,
You
so
cut off 2 feet and 2 feet to get it 6 feet long, and then you use those for the corners.
But we also use these for our meat chickens. We put quail in them before with the smaller wire, and
Nice.
just that way the quail have more space.
So they're 6 feet long. Our aisles on our flower field are about 6 feet wide, and then the flower rows are about 4 feet wide,
Okay.
or 4-foot weed barrier. So we'll take these and put half of the tractor sideways over the aisle, half over the flower bed, and move them every day. The rabbits will eat the grass out of the aisles, and then they generally will poop where there's not grass, so they poop in the flower beds, adding fertilizer.
Yeah.
So they're basically just recycling grass, taking the
Yeah.
grass,
I
and
like
recycling it
that.
into
All the
fertilizer.
winter hardy weeds get eaten down too, that
So-
are
Which
coming
is
up
nice.
in
That's
flower
so
beds.
cool. So what I just pulled from that is I didn't because I've never raised rabbits. They poop on a place
They
with no
always
grass.
like pick a spot.
Interesting.
So sometimes it's the place with no grass that helps a lot, but usually they'll pick one end or the other of their cage.
Yeah.
So this is their house end.
Yeah.
So they usually don't go in there. They
Yeah.
go off in
Interesting.
this corner, which is why you can litter box train rabbits. Pick the spot,
Generally.
and when you move the cage, the spot is the same
Right.
every time, especially girl
So you
rabbits.
figure
They're
out what
always
their spot
confusing.
is.
Yeah.
You can just flip the tractor around
Yeah.
if you have to.
Exactly. So I love those. That's like one of those patterns in nature, like that you can recognize and then say,
Yeah.
well, okay,
Advantage
now
of.
apply it to
Yeah,
something.
and we made a whole YouTube video just
Okay,
about
cool.
rabbits.
I don't know what breed they necessarily are. They're
They
kind of
are
a
mixed
mutt.
breed, bred for heat tolerance, large litters, and good mothering skills, and
But most importantly, to thrive on
growth
grass.
on pasture.
Nice.
Those are and they don't, like, if you're wanting them for meat, like, you're gonna get better, faster growth on rabbit pellets.
Right.
But if you don't need that meat and you really just want them to not eat a lot of food and
just manure.
yeah, if
Yeah.
you want them for fertilizer and for cute rabbits, then you don't have to feed them the pellets.
They can just do grass. They
Yeah,
can.
as long as we have grass.
Right.
Which is
So in the
summer
winter-
and scarce. In the winter, we give them hay, and we also supplement. Like, each rabbit gets a half a cup of pellets a day.
Okay.
So we measure it out so they're
But,
not. so
but in
they-
our
they
flower
will eat the
field,
field.
I mean, as long as there's not snow actively on the ground,
Yeah.
there is grass.
There's enough
Okay.
grass here because it's really.
Can they
well,
dig through
much.
snow? Like a sheep can do that? They don't do
They
that.
They
don't really.
Don't.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
They maybe could if it
And
got desperate.
Most
Yeah.
of them just kind of sit in the corner on their
Okay.
hay when it's winter. But they don't mind
Neat.
cold. They just want to hang out away from the wet.
But we don't have too many snow days here. I mean,
Yeah.
we
It's not-
get we usually get 2 or 3 good snows
Okay.
throughout the winter season, so they're more the anomaly than the regular.
Yeah, and that's another
events.
thing I have a YouTube video about is how we
Perfect.
prepped our rabbits and all the animals
Oh, yeah.
for when it snowed.
Okay.
So on the Angora rabbits and also the wool sheep, when we have wool that's not usable,
Yes.
we'll ferment it and use it as
Mulch.
mulch.
Oh, cool.
Over
So
this.
with just in water, do you add any microbes to it, or?
The thing that the old, shepherds and whatnot told me to do with the sheep wool, which I thought they were messing with me because, like, it was so gross. But they said to put, like, the belly wool and the stuff that has poop in it in
Yeah.
a tote and leave it out in the rain
Yeah.
in the spring and let it rain on it. And then when it really smells bad, it's done.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay. And so we haven't added anything to it as long as we just let it rain in it, and then you wear gloves and don't touch that stuff.
Yes.
It
'cause
stinks
it
and
will,
it
It'll
stays on
stain you
your skin.
forever.
especially the sheep because it has lanolin in there too. and
Yeah,
it just like
ooh.
sticks to
But
you.
it is wonderful
But
on the plants.
the
Nice.
difference it's made on our plants, like this year
Wow.
I put it on one of our grape plants and not the other one, and we got like 2 bunches of grapes on one plant and like all the grapes on the other one.
Wow. That's awesome.
And we had never actually gotten anything off of that plant before.
Wow.
And I did it with my strawberries. The
That's
first year we planted
very cool.
strawberries,
It's
I had enough to
generally-
cover half of them to mulch around each little strawberry plant,
Yeah.
and
Interesting.
it made a huge difference.
Wow.
And for the most part, it's the wool that most people throw away.
Yeah,
Right.
it's the
Oh,
part,
the belly
it's
wool,
the
yeah,
parts
you're
you
not
would
using.
pick out,
Yeah.
the belly wool, yeah.
Just
So
when
we
we have our
bag it
shearers
separately,
come, we
yeah.
just keep a bag of junk wool and keep it off to the side, and that's our mulch.
Yeah.
There's
It
a technique
works.
called jadam organic farming. It's a Korean or organic farming method, but that's one of the main fertilizer methods is doing this in anaerobically fermenting it in water. And but it's so cool because I've never heard the wool technique before. I've heard of you can do it with the animals and dead animals and stuff too, but yeah, very cool.
We have something
like
else we do with our dead animals.
Yeah, I just compost them usually.
Yeah. Do you
do
want
you
to
do?
tell you what we do with the animals?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we have like a rabbit or a chicken or something that
Yeah.
dies, we have a bucket.
I would say, and also whenever
Yeah.
we butcher our chickens,
Oh yeah, the parts
the
that we don't want
entrails,
anything to
the
eat.
parts that we don't, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So we put it in a bucket in the chicken yard. It hangs and it has holes drilled in it.
Oh, maggots.
And we feed the maggots.
We call them the maggot bucket.
maggot bucket.
If we lose an
Cool.
animal, then take it to the maggot bucket,
Yeah,
and you'll just have maggots pouring out of it, and the chickens are
go crazy.
living their best
yeah.
life.
Yeah, it works really well.
I mean, the
and
bucket gets a little funky,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it needs to be warm enough for flies.
Okay.
to
yeah,
get in
that's
and lay
the
eggs.
Yeah, not in
problem is
winter,
the
but-
winter. But
yeah.
we've actually put things in them in the winter, and it kind of stays cold and frozen. And
When it thaws, then
when
it
it
goes.
thaws, there's
You
flies.
just got to
so-
go empty out the hair and bones every
Yeah.
now and again.
Yeah.
Oh, neat.
But
yeah.
and we keep it way far in the back of the chicken yard so that
Yeah,
we don't
so
have
no-
to
When
smell
we,
it.
that's one thing I'm really proud of is when we do our meat chickens. We butcher enough just for our family right now. I hope to do enough that we can maybe have some to sell later. But just to do ours, we butcher about 25 a day, pretty comfortably. We can do those in an
Yeah.
afternoon. Compost the feathers. The heads and the entrails go into the maggot bucket. The feet we dehydrate for chew toys for the dogs. We generally will just freeze the chickens whole shrink wrap them and put them in the freezer. And then when we prepare them, we keep all the bones and skin out, make broth. First round of broth we eat. It's really good. Second round of broth, sometimes if it's good enough, we'll eat it as well. And then we'll run either a second or third round and just cook it down for about 2 days until the bones just mush in your hands. And that's good dog, cat,
feed it back to the animals.
any other animal food. So effectively, you can do chickens with no waste. Remember, we sit around and sometimes it gets a little contentious, but we we'll figure, okay, we need to put new fence around this. How can we do this with what we have?
Right.
Or we need to accomplish this. How do we do it without buying anything?
Yeah, it reminds me of our grandparents or something living through the Great Depression, hearing some of those stories of we saved the tinfoil and we did this and I get.
He always tells me I must have had to deal with that in a past
I told her in a
life.
past life she died in the Depression. I know she did.
It's always we can use everything.
I know, you really can though.
But
I mean,
it's
awesome.
Our culture, our society has been conditioned to throw it away and buy a new one. So, if you make a game out of it almost, it can be fun, but it also saves you a ton of money.
And you're growing healthier animals, healthier food for your family.
And teaching our kids a
Improving
really good lesson.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
and improving
amazing.
the soil and
that's why we do it, right?
That's why we do it. Of using what you have. This 16-foot by 4-foot cattle panel, when we moved here, people had cows here at some point, and this was all overgrown, but when we started just bushwhacking our way through the place, we found about 50 of these.
Ooh, score.
Like gold mine. Generally, I'll use 8-foot T-posts, 16-foot cattle panels, and put them up with zip ties, and then I'll put one plumbing hose clamp on each one just to hold it tight.
don't just trust the zip ties.
Yeah.
Now the weight of the
we have had the
tomatoes.
weight of the tomatoes pull the whole thing off with the zip ties.
They're 16-foot panels. I usually come in about two squares on each side and put one in the middle.
And one in the middle.
And then I'll overlap the two right here. So I've got 32-foot section here.
And they're raised up off the ground. That's the other thing we do
Yes.
that lots of people don't do. They're at least 2 feet off the ground
Yeah.
because the tomato plants are clearly going to get higher than 4 feet.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we also, in the spring, you can see it on the next row a little better. I trim off all the lower leaves to prevent them from getting wet in the splashback and all that. And normally I keep all of this from laying on the ground, but I gave up this year.
It might be worth the investment because this will last you decades.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
Yeah, and then
Versus using wood or something that is going to last 5 years.
right.
Yeah.
And that's
not be as
the
sturdy.
cattle panels are what our greenhouses are held up
Yep,
with too, which
these are-
makes them really wind resistant.
And there's a lot of wind in Missouri, I
Yes,
heard, isn't
we
there?
can get
We get
some
pretty
pretty big
windy.
Yeah.
storms. We grew winter squash on this. We grew snap peas and shelling peas first, and then added the winter squash while the peas were still going. And then there's tomatoes and cucumbers on that one. And I'm planning next year to redo our whole tomato area, and we're going to do the weed fabric so that there's a slit down the middle, so they just the seam. And I'm going to plant peas through the whole thing and put some sort of strings there to reach them to the top. So then we'll add the tomatoes in when it's time, because peas grow and are blooming and producing when you put the tomatoes in, and then they are done once the tomatoes need the trellis.
Great. That's a great succession tip. I like that a lot.
And I need more room because I put peas on all of this and it was great, but there were 25 plants, and I'm that's not enough for us.
So you'll put the peas in the ground or beginning of spring?
Probably I planted them as early as mid-March here.
Wow.
And our last frost is technically April 25th. It's about the same time we plant potatoes and onions here.
Got it.
St.
Yeah, I
Pepper's
love
Day.
that. Yeah, do the peas, they die out, and then by the time they die out, those tomatoes
The
are coming
tomatoes
up.
will be there. Yep.
Great tip. So luffa's a new vegetable that I'm growing in my garden this year, so I can get my sponges. But you can also eat these, and they're delicious. I have not tried mine yet, but tell us, when do you pick them?
So if you pick them when they're about this size and they're firm, but they're still have some give to them, you cut them up and eat them just like you would like a crookneck squash or something, zucchini. They're indistinguishable when you eat them, really.
Yeah, they're really good.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so the beginning of the season, let your fruit set so that you can get the...
like that when
These. It's not quite dry yet, but
Almost.
it's drying. Yeah.
So your first fruits will set, you'll get your sponges, but then into season, something that's this big won't grow big enough to become a sponge. So you're better off just eating it like a zucchini. And this time of year, typically the zucchinis are dead. So perfect timing for the luffa.
Our livestock guardian dogs, we have an Anatolian Shepherd and a Great Pyrenees, and they have had babies together, so we've got 2 half and half.
Cross, nice.
We are slowly working our way back to all Anatolian, like Rosie here.
Yeah.
And the main reason is the Anatolians will usually bond to and guard animals. Whereas what we found, at least with the Pyrenees and in our research, is that the Pyrenees want to guard the land.
Their territory.
Their territory, and by nature they want their territory to be a lot more than we have. So keeping them off the roads, off the neighbors' farms is difficult.
Interesting.
So we're trying to go back to just Anatolians, because if the animals move pasture to pasture, she just goes with them.
Yeah, interesting. So you found, in your case, that they've been more adapted to the animals
And
versus...
she also, Anatolians eat less, which is
Really?
super nice. They
Really?
so much less. And I didn't know this was a thing when we got her, and then we got the Pyrenees, and then I was like, what is wrong with him? He eats so much. And then I looked it up, and it's actually a breed characteristic for the Anatolians, and one of their daughters doesn't eat very much, and the other one eats like a Pyrenees.
Interesting.
But I mean, like she can live off of like air and goat poop. We feed her obviously,
We
but
obviously feed her,
but she does not eat, like, for her size, she doesn't eat that much.
Interesting.
we love the personality of the Great Pyrenees,
Yes.
because they're just...
I do
they're
too.
Super sweet.
Yeah,
and,
great family dog. You don't have to worry about them with your kids
yeah,
or anything.
and Rosie is
And-
awesome with the kids.
Oh,
too,
good.
so-
Yeah.
I heard Anatolians can be a little bit more aggressive with people.
They can, but as long as they know you,
Then
and it's totally fine. And she's
Okay.
used to us having farm visitors, and we're out there telling her it's okay. These are people we know.
Yeah.
New people every day, but
right.
Yeah, she
She's-
barked at you. We told her it's okay.
And then
she
she's
said,
calm.
"Cool, I'm going to go hide then."
yeah, and she went and laid down behind the house. She's not even watching us now. She's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you guys got this? Okay." Sometimes
Nice.
she doesn't trust us as much.
What
Like
ab-
if she hears a gunshot, then suddenly she's in our yard. Like,
Oh.
you guys okay? You
Inter-
cool? Did you kill
wow.
something
Oh,
for
yeah.
me?
That's awesome.
She's got a whole thing, but otherwise she stays in her fence. She's our only dog that doesn't require an electric fence.
Wow.
To keep
Interesting.
her where we want her. I think she's really smart. Like
Yeah.
like if we tell her something about an animal, like it's like she knows what we're saying. Like
Yeah.
there was one time when she tried to attack a guinea that had
Yeah.
gotten into her pen that was ours, and we told her like, no, that's ours.
Yeah.
And like yelled at her from
Yeah.
across the
Never
pasture.
again.
She never touched one again. Like,
Interesting.
oh, cool, that's yours. I'm leaving it alone. Like
Yeah.
she's
Interesting.
And I have no issue if we got a new animal, put it through quarantine.
Yeah.
We threw a new goat in here. Not
Didn't
worried
even-
about it at all. She
No.
knows.
When we first got our pigs, she was a little more concerned about them, but she had
Mm-hmm.
just had puppies, and they made weird noises. So they were piglets making strange noises, and she was like, it took a little bit more to convince her that they were safe and that they weren't going to hurt her or her babies. But otherwise, like, that's the only time we've had to really like do anything extra with her.
Does she kind of help train the other dogs a little bit? Like they kind of observe her at all? And
Yeah.
And she said if she sets off the alarm, they listen.
Okay, yeah.
Where if one of the house dogs sets off the alarm, nobody listens. So
That's funny. They know the difference.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And most of them will listen to Rocky now too, our Great Pyrenees, because he's by the driveway. So if he barks first, then she barks, then the other ones
They
start.
know somebody's coming down the drive.
The Kune Kunes are really just known for not rooting as much, as long as they are. I mean, lots of people say all pigs root, and they can root, but if you look at like this ginger pig here, her nose is kind of really short and upturned. That makes it a lot harder for them to root. Like this whole area, we dug this up for them with a shovel when it was.
When it was 100
When it was
degrees.
100 degrees, we dug this out and filled it with water, which it's kind of filled back in now, but we had to make them a wallow and all that because they can't do it themselves.
Interesting.
Especially not when the ground is really dry. But this is the only area in the whole pasture that's got any damage or rooting at all, because they just don't need to do that. They go out in the grass and just graze just like the goats do.
Very cool.
They've got a redder meat.
Yep.
You know, they talk about pork
Yeah.
being the other white meat. Their meat
Yeah.
is more of a red meat. They're a lard pig, so they do have a lot of
fat.
lot of fat,
Which we use that.
which
so
we use. We
Yep.
render the lard and use it in cooking and everything else. So
Part of that is diet too. When they're mostly eating grass, they're a little bit leaner.
They'll be
These
leaner.
I'm just hoping they're really pregnant, because otherwise they are overweight.
Yeah.
But given the fact that we had them with a boar and we tried to breed them,
Yeah,
they're
they must-
probably bred. So,
Yeah.
like otherwise they're gaining weight on summer pasture and
Yeah.
their minimal grain ration. So
So how much do you feed them? These
we
three.
feed them. They each get 1 cup in the morning of grain.
Like a big scoop?
Like an actual
Like a measuring cup.
Yes.
That's it.
Like they get a cup in the morning and a cup in the evening.
Per pig or total?
Per pig.
Per pig.
Per pig.
But they're also getting oatmeal.
And no, that's the piglets are getting oatmeal.
piglets are getting
we had
oatmeal.
some.
Sorry.
But these get all of our kitchen scraps too.
And the kitchen.
So these ones
But
get
that's-
the minimal amount of grain, but they get
Yeah.
all the kitchen scraps, which is mostly vegetables at this point.
Yeah, because if I was going to feed my, I'm feeding my these are like 250, these are like 300-pound pigs now. I mean, I got to feed them almost a half a 5-gallon bucket every day.
Yeah, they
least.
eat so much.
But they're
less.
grower, yeah.
Sure.
And so our grow outs are they're eating a grain ration, but I don't think it's that much. I don't know what
Yeah.
the kids feed them. So, but they get, we've got some oatmeal from where would we get that from?
It was kind of like a back to school program, or it's one of those school breakfast programs, and they ended up with a bunch of extra that passed its expiration date. So they
So
gave
we have all these bags of
We've got
oatmeal.
cases
That's cool.
of.
So
How'd you find that, or how would somebody find something like that in their town?
We kind of lucked onto it. A friend of ours told us about it.
Okay.
So we've kind of got an in with them. So when they have food that goes bad, we get a call,
And they come. They know we have pigs, so.
Right, and like donation shelters or some places that they'll give you food.
Yeah, and
if they can't give it to people.
We have a friend who has an in with a natural grocery store in town, and when they get produce going bad, they get a phone call.
But what she gets is usually
Right.
like bags and bags of lettuce.
Yeah.
Or something that's kind of going bad. It's hard to feed all that at once, and you can't really freeze lettuce.
Right.
So I really like having stuff like the oats to supplement with.
Yeah, this has been really good. I mean, it's a little sugary. It's not what we would necessarily choose. It's an
Yeah,
apple
it is like
cinnamon oatmeal.
apple flavored,
But for a
there's
grow out
nothing in
pigs,
it they
I mean,
can't have.
it's
Right.
nothing bad. It's just not.
And we do cook it too. We pour boiling
yeah.
water in it and let it be like regular oatmeal.
Oh.
So they don't have to work extra to digest all that.
Yeah, neat.
And we
So-
also feed that to our chickens. And I usually wait till winter to feed the chickens warm stuff, but
Very cool.
we have boxes and boxes of
Yeah,
oatmeal right now.
I'd say if you've got a local, either a food shelter or
Yeah.
the one that we have struck up a friendship with is it's actually a faith-based group, and they provide before and after school meals to
A rural
a
school.
very rural school district,
Yeah.
and when they have food that they can't get rid of, that's
Very
gone
nice.
bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or they can't feed it to kids because it's past the expiration date.
Yeah,
It's
it's
been
not
really
bad.
like,
It's
yeah,
Right.
just
They can't give it to people.
right.
I mean, they're
Or
the
it's
one
been in the
putting it in a
refrigerator too
dumpster.
long, and and they need to clear out the space because they
Right.
get regular shipments, so they can't.
It's going
with
in the
old.
trash into a landfill,
Yeah.
basically. So
Right.
Yeah,
So it
this is
comes to our pigs and chickens.
Yeah.
The chickens eat a lot.
beautiful.
I mean, I'd say just ask around. The worst somebody can do
Yeah.
is say no.
Exactly. Yep. And brewers who make
Yeah.
beer, the spent brewer's grain. That's
Yeah.
another example.
Yeah.
Those are.
Whenever we have a tree go down or a branch fall off or any kind of extra larger piece of wood, rather than throwing it in a brush pile to burn or just letting it rot away out there, we'll throw it in this particular yard, and then every couple months you'll go flip it over where it's making ground contact, and then the worms, the bugs, the beetles that are trying to decompose that log, you flip those over, the chickens get at it, and it's just good, free, high protein
Yeah.
chicken food.
That's fantastic.
Anything you can do to supplement, people pay good money for mealworms. It's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Right.
There are actual mealworms that
Yeah,
come up in
provided
the
by nature.
So how often do you have to flip them to get it?
And you don't have to ever do it, but if you wanted to get all the worms off of it, I'd say every month or two, depending on the weather. If it's
Yeah,
wetter,
it's wet.
more often. If it's dry, they're just going to sit there.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it's wet, I tell the kids to flip one or two
Yeah.
every time they feed the chickens, so
Nice.
that they don't have to do a lot of work, and it's just a couple logs. Especially
Right.
when it's this smaller stuff, 'cause
Yeah.
the kids can move it real easy. When it's rainy, and we throw like cover crop seeds in there, like radishes and turnips and stuff that they can eat the greens, and
Nice.
we close off this fence, and then they don't eat all the seeds.
Oh, cool.
And
I like that.
then we'll have a crop of that, and then in the fall, all of our flower field zinnias and stuff will be piled in here in a giant
And let them
mountain.
go crazy.
and
So they'll eat the seeds off of it, and then as those start to decompose more in
They
the
have
winter
more
and
bugs.
spring, it's more bugs, and then that's chicken
yeah.
food as
And
well.
we still go in there sometimes and take a shovel to it and or a pitchfork and flip a little bit over, and that gets them reinterested because they get bored with it. They're like, that's our mountain. What are you talking about?
With
That's
50
not
laying hens, it really stretches your feed. Sheep gates.
Sheep gate, so cattle panel, and then you got a...
Just cover it with zip ties and a 2x4 welded wire fence.
And then just a carabiner or something like that.
Yeah, just whatever. And then I usually just like staple them in, or sometimes I'll staple them in. Sometimes I'll take the last piece that you cut off that's sticking out and bend them down.
Oh, yep.
And then you can stick them down like inside these.
Or inside of like a staple or something. Yeah, it can almost be like a little hinge actually.
And the other thing you can do on a lot of these is we'll take a good sized bolt and attach it to the gate, and then use a hose clamp to attach the bolt to a T-post in the little T here.
Yes.
And then it swings on that bolt. It uses the bolt as a hinge.
And then how do you attach the bolt?
With hose clamps.
Just clamping on there, yeah.
I've got another one up here I can show you.
Okay, cool. That's a great idea.
My father-in-law came up with that.
That's a great little idea.
We found a farm that's about an hour from here that that raises primarily A2 jerseys, and they have a few other cows, but they have an A2 herd, and they raise their cows to be like a really gentle temperament. They have kids. Their kids play with them. They breed for that characteristic and for the ability to hand milk. This Jersey is they genetically test them for the A2 gene. So they can either have A1, A2. They have two of them. So A1, 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 A2, or A2, A2. Those are the options for milk cows. And she is an A2, A2. And that is supposed to be easier to digest and better for humans. The idea is that that's more of like the original gene that was in cows
before they were modified to produce gallons and gallons of milk.
Yes.
The number I heard, something if I'm wrong, but prior to the 50s, your average dairy cow produced 2 to 3 gallons of milk.
Or like
oh really?
Like 3 to 5, and now it's up to like 15 to 20, like
a day.
A day. Dairy cows that have been that are in the dairy industry are producing like massive quantities of milk, and that's not what they were supposed to do.
No, they're not designed for that.
Long term, like it's not where they were
I
originally
guarantee
for.
There's less nutrition.
Yeah.
Way less, because it's probably watered down essentially.
And it's genetically different.
Right.
And it's no question why people have trouble digesting it.
Yeah, it's a completely different product than what you would get from a cow that's raised more on pasture, and she's only 11 months old, and she's already definitely bigger than a mid-sized Jersey. And so she'll probably make at her second freshening like 5 or 6 gallons a day. Wow,
that's awesome. And what's your plan with all the milk and the cream? Because Jerseys are a higher fat content cow too, right?
Yes, and our plan is we're going to make a lot of cheese and a lot of butter, because you can't really make butter with goat milk without having a cream separator, because it just doesn't separate the way cow milk does. So with cow milk, you just put it in the fridge and let it separate, skim off the cream, and you can make all those cream products. But so we're going to have those. It sounds, it's a long game, but we're very excited. Another year.
So how old does the cow need to be before you can breed it and she starts producing?
14 months. 14. Is when you're supposed to wait for
14
breeding.
months to breed, and then
and then another
10 months.
10 months
for the baby.
pregnancy. So she was born in October 2021, and she will hopefully have her first calf October 2023. And then we're also going to be feeding milk to the pigs. That's
fantastic.
Leftover milk,
skim
after
milk,
you're making cheese. Skim milk is awesome pig supplement.
But hopefully we will have enough, and it will get good enough at this that we can, on a small scale, make some cheeses and butters to be able to sell to also supplement our farm income.
Yeah, selling milk by the gallon is not really very profitable, but adding that
putting
value
a value
add
add to it is where it's at. And one of the things that we've done a lot of is like doing things with herbs, herb salts and things like that. So herb cheeses, herb butters and things. It adds a value layer to it that people will pay extra for, and it's worth it.
Yes. It makes a lot more use of your time when you can charge like 10 times the price, essentially, or whatever that works out to be.
Yeah, I can never understand how people who hand milk sell their milk for $6 or $7 a gallon. I'm like, no. People ask us for goat milk all the time, and I'm like, no.
It's not worth my time.
You can't afford it.
Yes, you can't afford it. It's going to our animals before we sell it for that cheap. So it's too much labor and everything else.
Do you plan on doing artificial insemination, or are you going to get a bull?
we're planning to do the artificial method, because a bull, I did consider buying like a young Jersey bull, like that would grow up to be like right at breeding age, because they need to be about 9 months from what I read to be, so if he was like a few months younger than her, but we didn't end up finding one, and it's an extra mouth to feed, and there was a drought, and so we can ask around. We asked our vet, our livestock vet, and she said she knows people and we can find somebody. My main concern is I want to find somebody who will come when we say she's in heat now, because we can tell she has an attitude.
She is vocal.
She is vocal, and she is right. Clockwork has her cycles every 3 weeks. We know exactly when to expect it, and we have to move her out of this pasture and way back into with our goats, because there's a bull across the road, and we don't want him breaking through to get to her,
or her breaking through
to get to him. So we
take
also
her away
have to
keep her away from the
situation.
goats, because she also tries to mount the goats.
Yeah, so she gets her own little pasture.
Aggressive.
She is a violent girl when she's looking for love.
Yeah, she goes after people too, since she's a bottle baby. So
Watch out, that's dangerous. Jeez.
So, but it's just like one day
It's
every 3 weeks.
about 18 hours, or 36
and you
hours.
know it's happening because you can hear her like screaming. Like
Oh my
sometimes
gosh.
it comes on in the night and she wakes everybody up.
I didn't know they did that.
But well, not all of them do. My friend has a Jersey, and they can't even tell when she's in heat.
Yeah.
Unless
Yeah, a
they
lot
have
of people
another
have to take
cow. Like lots of
temperatures and
people
all
too
that
have 2 cows, and you know they can tell because they'll mount each other, and otherwise they can't tell. But she is the vocal. Now she's talking to the cows across the road.
What to do?
We've also got honey. We've got herbs, and we've got everything in here. The eggs up at the top. There's duck eggs and chicken eggs, raw, freeze-dried. So with those, we just crack them into a giant bowl, scramble them up, and pour it into the freeze dryer, and then it comes out like a crystally looking powder. It's sparkly, like glitter. But when you add water to it, the whole texture of the scrambled egg comes back.
Wow.
You can't freeze dry whole eggs because the egg white kind of basically just floats away into. It becomes so like.
Interesting. It's
It
not
just
like
doesn't
dense
work.
enough, or
Yeah, it
something.
doesn't work. You have to mix it together to make it work right. And then the scrambled ones, it's better if you undercook them a little and then freeze dry them, and then they come out better than if they are really cooked.
How do you know how much water to add to eat them?
I Google it.
There's a ratio.
There's a ratio,
yeah.
and I think we wrote it on the top of the jars because we looked it up when we first did it, and it's like it tells you how much to put, like a tablespoon of powder and so much water makes an egg. So, and when we did these, we wrote down how many eggs approximately were in each jar.
So you have
So
to kind of
that's
track
all
it.
on
So
the
freeze
lid.
drying, there's a little bit more math involved for
A
when
little
you
for
when you need
eggs,
to use
yes, but like for onions,
Yeah.
it's like so if we wanted to use this whole jar of onions, which we probably wouldn't. Hey, don't do that, buddy. We take the lid off. There's a little oxygen absorber in there too, so we'll take that off the top, and then we pour boiling water into the jar and let it sit and let them sit probably 15 minutes, and then we strain it out and you cook the food. And that works. So these are sweet potatoes,
How
there's
many
broccoli.
onions is in there?
They're true to size, so
Yeah, they stay about the same
Two
size.
tops, maybe.
that's probably 2 or 3.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
It depends on how big your onions
Yeah.
are too. But the nice thing about onions is that like this is a partial jar, and I didn't have to reseal that or anything. I just put the lid back on, and they don't go bad. Like
Because it's freeze dried.
Well, because it's freeze dried, but also because it's onions.
Oh.
Now something like tomatoes, like if I
Okay.
open this jar of tomato slices, those are freeze dried.
From last year.
Yeah, from last year. And if I open that jar and expose them to the moisture that's in the air,
Right.
they will get squishy and gummy pretty quickly. But they'll, you can eat them for a meal, but you couldn't just put the lid back on and call it good. Same thing with the eggs. You have to reseal those.
So you freeze dry it and put it in that jar with an oxygen absorber.
Yeah,
there's nothing else.
There's one here.
And that oxygen absorber pulls out any remaining
out,
oxygen
yeah.
and moisture, and then that's it.
And the other thing we do with some of them in our... What are you doing, dude? We have a vacuum sealer attachment for our food saver. So, like, you put this, there's a hose that comes out of the food saver, and you plug it into this.
And that pulls the air, yeah.
And it sucks all the air out. So if you do that and an oxygen absorber, it's a lot better for long-term
Got it.
storage.
Okay.
But if
okay.
we're just doing, like, we're going to eat this over the winter, I'm going to do one or the other. Not
Got
both.
it. But if you want long term, like 10 years.
Well, if you
Or
really want
something.
long-term,
Yeah.
you don't put them in glass because you're exposing them to light. So the really long-term are in the Mylar bags
Got it.
with the oxygen absorber.
Okay.
And that's supposed to be better for
a vapor
for
sealed
long-term.
5-gallon bucket, like a bucket like that maybe would work too.
Yeah, lots of people, they make Mylar bags that fit into those buckets too, so you can seal it and then put it in, and it's extra fancy. Yeah, we've got, that's all honey.
Honey, this is from your bees. Neat.
And there's a big section of honey here taking up my tomatoes. This is the dark one, right?
Yeah, and that's more cloverish.
Clover versus flowers.
Early spring, okay.
Sometimes we get, if you get a sale on something, like we came across a whole bunch of organic lemons.
Whole bunch.
Snatched them up, and she freeze dried.
Actually got them for free. But, and limes. This is lime juice.
So you juiced them.
Well, this is, I didn't freeze dry them.
Well, it's not freeze
canned
dried,
them.
sorry.
Yeah, we juiced the limes and lemons and canned them.
Freeze dried zest, right?
I did. This
tell me.
is freeze dried lemon zest.
Whoa.
It's magical.
Wow.
Like, it was a a lot of organic lemons to make that. Cool. And then we also have one of lime zest that's freeze dried.
Interesting. So a freeze dryer is a pretty, I mean,
and freeze dried.
It's a great modern technology.
It is really neat. And
yeah.
like lots of people really worry about opening and closing freeze dried stuff, and that isn't as a concern with like the tomatoes like we talked about, and the squash and a few other things. But like our peppers, things that are herbs that you'd usually use more like, or that are drier anyway. Onions, the peppers, the celery, and the herbs. Yeah. Like these are freeze dried parsley, basil, dill, all of that, which taste like fresh. They're amazing. But you can open the jar, use what you need, close the jar. As long as you seal it back up, it keeps the same way a regular dried herb would.
Wow. When I make a bunch of chicken broth, we'll put it on the stove. I'll get a little bit of the freeze-dried basil and oregano and just drop just the tiniest bit into the broth to make soup, and it is...
It's like you're finding fresh herbs.
Yeah. Wow. And so what's the difference between the like a dried herb and then the freeze-dried? You notice a difference in the quality.
So
in the color and in the flavor.
When you
take food out of the freeze dryer, you find just the shell of the food with no moisture on it left on your trays where you put it in. The chamber of the freeze dryer is covered in ice. And it's basically pure water. So when that ice melts and you drain it out, sometimes it'll have a little bit of a smell of the food it came from, but for the most part, it is completely, smell this.
Smell this. That's freeze-dried basil from last year.
Crazy, whoa.
So it's
all it's doing is removing the water.
Right.
When you dehydrate, you're actually losing some of the oils.
Yeah, you're losing
and the things that the actual flavor.
Yeah.
And nutrients.
Brown
you're losing nutrients.
Yeah. Because like, can you see how green that is? This is freeze-dried parsley. But like if you dry parsley,
it's the same color as when you harvested it.
Yeah,
but yeah, when it's dried,
it
loses color.
I have some in here. I'm sure that's not.
It's actually
correct. Yes.
Ounce for ounce, it's way more flavorful.
You don't have to use
Grab a jar of strawberries. These, when we did vacuum seal these, so if you hear it.
Oh wow.
Try one.
Oh my gosh.
Somewhere in here I have
all
those.
Whoa.
All the flavor. The dehydrated one, you're going to lose a lot of that flavor.
And it's going to be harder to chew and like amazing.
That is so. I mean, who needs to buy candy when you got this?
Exactly.
So for people who are trying to decide, because freeze dryers aren't cheap, they're a couple grand, aren't they?
At least.
At least.
Like
the large
few
size
grand.
one we've got is probably closer to $3,500.
Yeah. So it's a big investment. It's a big investment. But I mean, man.
It has completely changed the way we do things in here.
The water
pressure canned
okay.
green beans. Same varieties of beans, freeze dried.
Oh my gosh.
They look, because this is this like washed out color is this purple and white. And I mean, those are pre-cooked and ready to go, but what we do with these is we pour the boiling water in the jar, let it sit. Sometimes we have to dump it and add more if it cools off too fast. And then drain it out, and we fry them like stir fry, cook them. You can steam them, you can do whatever, but they taste like fresh. Like
is a little.
Yeah, what happens?
It's just if you get them hydrated the right amount, the texture is just like the fresh. If you don't quite get them hydrated enough, it tastes more like a thawed frozen bean, like with a kind of like a little bit tougher.
Whereas the texture's never going to be as good.
The texture's never going to. It's always
better in a
mush,
soup
basically. And I don't like those. He grew up on them and likes them. I'm like, oh, these are gross. Then it takes away all the flavor though. Even when the texture is not quite right because you can't get the moisture right. Second favorite here, which we just discovered last year, this is zucchini and yellow summer squash. And if you freeze these and try to cook them, they turn to complete mush. Right. They don't work. And we don't have to blanch these either, or the beans, because if you freeze beans, you have to blanch them.
Right.
If
I don't
freeze
like
dry
to
them,
do that.
You don't have to blanch them.
So there's no benefit.
But these, like, we can do the same thing as long as you hydrate them with hot water and drain it, and then we stir fry them with the beans and stuff, and like the texture is just a little different, but it's the flavor of summer, and the nutritional value is still there.
That's what I'm noticing because color and flavor is an indication
Yes.
of nutrition. And
freeze-dried food keeps more nutritional value than
Yeah.
any other shelf-stable preservation method.
Yep.
So this is beef broth.
freeze-dried.
Freeze-dried beef broth.
Oh,
So
okay.
another thing you would have to pressure can that you don't
Right.
have to pressure can if you have a
Right.
freeze dryer, and you just take out what you need. You could make it as strong as you want or butter it down.
And that's probably...
And it's got all the gelatin, and
Right.
we didn't skim off any fat on this
Nice.
because when you're pressure canning broth, you have to skim off the fat, so you lose all that.
Oh my gosh.
When
Okay,
you're freeze
yeah.
drying it, you just have to make sure it's really well incorporated, because if the fat is separated, it kind of causes some craziness in the freeze dryer. I have some of them, probably
Wow.
at least, and it.
So you can make it like super concentrated. Make like what's it called, bouillon, or the that those
Yeah, and
things
we
you can buy.
have turkey broth
Yeah.
and chicken and all sorts of stuff in here. Yeah, venison. And then
Nice.
this one is goat milk,
Oh, dehydrated
which
milk.
is
yeah, powdered milk.
powdered
right?
milk,
You're
which
right. Right.
does not
That's a
taste
good
very
one.
good. Like that
Oh, the
goaty
grassy,
flavor.
yeah.
That's what it tastes like. Lots of people say freezing goat milk does the same thing, so I assume it's something to do with that. It doesn't taste like it does fresh. But it's still nice to have. Like,
It's good
we're not
emergency,
gonna drink
food.
it.
That's-
You can't
yeah.
really make cheese out of it. We tried that. It did not taste good either.
Mm.
But we saved it this year. We were saving that because we were afraid we were gonna have bottle babies or puppies or something like that that we might need to supplement.
That's
and
a
you can
good-
use it for that.
That's smart.
You can use it in baking, and you don't notice the goaty flavor. But we just have a little bit because we don't have that much extra. But we will be trying that with the cow milk and try to
See if
fix the flavor issues whenever we really need to be preserving it. Because lots of people do it, but
Yeah.
the goat milk just came out very goaty.
Interesting.
Since freeze drying is just removing all the liquid, or all the, not the liquid, the water.
Yeah.
It doesn't remove the liquid, it removes the water.
Just
Which is why you
H2O.
can freeze-dry broth.
So when you go to rehydrate your food, depending on what it is, you don't have to rehydrate it with water. So imagine rehydrating that zucchini with chicken broth.
Yeah.
or something
else.
Well,
Yeah.
you can
do a
freeze-dry meat.
You can freeze dry meat,
and
so you take
rehydrate
a
it with your marinade solution.
yeah,
Oh.
Worcestershire
Whatever
sauce,
you
Yeah.
or juice or
whatever.
something to make it taste
Very interesting. Yeah, it opens up a
You
lot
can
of doors.
play. There's a lot of fun
Yeah.
to be had.
So so besides the initial cost, how much power does that thing pull?
It uses a decent amount of power. So we have pretty cheap electric here.
Yeah.
But I can tell you on ours, we've estimated that the average batch costs between $2 and $6, depending on how long of a batch it is.
case of peaches was from one load.
One thing.
And
Got
then
it.
there was more. This isn't all of it. We
Yeah.
ate some of them.
Yeah.
And we put some of them in Mylar bags.
Right.
Just because the peaches don't shrink.
But what I would
But
I challenge people when they say it's so expensive to run. Okay, well if you're water bathing, you're boiling water on your stove or on a propane. So you're using electricity, you're using natural gas, you're using propane. The other thing you can do when you're using jars, these are all flats that have already been used. These are not new
Yeah.
flats.
The lids.
The lids.
Okay.
So you don't have to use new ones every time. Those things aren't expensive, or aren't cheap, excuse me.
Yeah.
So once you pop one that you've used on maybe your green beans or your tomato sauce,
Yeah.
we save them. You technically aren't supposed to reuse those in canning, but you can reuse them on your freeze-dried food. So
And
It's-
we keep the rims on all the freeze-dried food to make sure that stays.
Stays.
Because when you're on the canned items, you
Canning.
can see there's no rims on them because you don't want that false seal.
Yes, yeah. So people do
That's
that so
what
that they know
So
it's
you know
truly
it stayed
sealed.
sealed. But with
not-
these, like even when we vacuum seal them, sometimes they fail, and it's not worth losing your food because it doesn't matter if this isn't sealed. It matters that the lid is on because it's a
Okay.
freeze-dried product, so it's not
it.
it's shelf stable whether it's open or closed.
Got it.
And if they come, if the lid popped off completely, it would be ruined. The only other thing I would mention about this room is that we're clearly not in a basement. Lots of people think they can't do this unless they have a basement or a cellar. And like we've been using this room for this purpose for 5 years.
Okay.
And the food doesn't go bad. It's a little warm for it in the summer. I've got a thermometer right here. It says it's 76. So that's about as hot as it gets in here. And in the winter, it gets like cold enough that sometimes we have to run a space heater because we don't want anything to freeze. And if it's like below 0 outside,
Right.
we'll have things on the floor that will freeze.
Oh, wow.
So we have to keep the food up off the floor, and the
it's
floor
fall.
runs around.
Don't listen to people that say
Yeah.
you have to have a cellar, you have to have a basement. Anybody can start preserving food
Darkness is more important than cool temperatures.
By far.
For canned foods. If you're wanting to keep these pumpkins here all winter, like they would do a lot better in 50 degrees and like or fresh onions, fresh potatoes.
And that stuff.
This room runs a little bit warmer than the rest of our house, which is why our potatoes and onions are in our dining room. That's right by the thermostat. It stays cooler and
in a suburban home or anything, and as a little garden, if you think you can't preserve food because you don't have a place to store it, if you want to try to preserve it for a decade, well maybe, but if you're preserving it to have fresh food, healthy food to eat over the winter, go for it. Yeah.
Nice.
Don't let that be an excuse.
Yeah, people look at this a lot of times. They're, how long is this going to last you? And I'm like, hopefully about 10 months. Like, we don't want it to last longer than that. And that's the food we put in the jars. We want to eat it all in the year and then put it back, new food, in the next year. And then sometimes, like, we won't have as good of a harvest of something. And it's nice to have, like, we always have a little extra tomato sauce because I don't want to run out of that. So we'll use that first, even after we start putting up new tomato sauce.
In meal prep in the winter, it'll come in. I'm going to do sweet potatoes, some onions, some squash, and some green beans. Take all 4 of these, hydrate them, strain them, and put a little lard or olive oil or whatever in the skillet, and
easy.
But to get through spring when we're so busy planting and
we need something fast.
We come in, we're exhausted, and you want a healthy meal. Rehydrating.
You don't have to spend all that time chopping and peeling.
Smart, I like that.
And when you're making soup, the other thing, when you're making like soup, you take the zucchini or green beans, whatever you're putting in your soup, you don't even have to rehydrate it. You just dump it in, and it's going to rehydrate in the broth.
Like we made early season salsa this year with our first tomatoes, and we didn't have peppers yet. So these are pre-chopped sweet peppers, all ready from last September.
And
I just dumped them in there.
Peppers and onions, I don't rehydrate them. I'll mix them into the meat the raw meat, and it's going to rehydrate with the juices that are in the raw meat as it cooks.
Yummy.
Yeah.
Come on. That is cool. Yeah, I
there are people who like we freeze dry chili and like other pre-cooked. So we have some like chicken
curry that I made.
Like you can just put the whole soup or pre-made whatever. We have some veggie beef stew that we freeze dried, and then you take it out and you put it in your bowl and you pour your hot water in. You have to let it hydrate. Beans take a while, so the chili could take longer to rehydrate. I really think we need to start doing it like overnight or something. Because they take a long time to soak. You gotta
pre-soak them for a while.
But it's like it's worth it.
Yeah,
have the food.
A big pot. We make big meals with a big family, and we get too much. As long as I've got a tray full, a freeze dryer tray, which is
one of those.
This is the size of the tray.
Yeah.
As long as I've got enough to fill this tray, then leftovers can just go in the freeze dryer. And
so even a liquid like a broth, it's like it's a bunch of liquid on there, and then you scrape it off, and then okay.
Liquid, this holds just over a quart.
Actually, the broth.
Okay, so you're getting ready for your U-pick operation. So at 5 p.m. your customers come, and how did you acquire these customers, and then how do you schedule them to come at a certain time, or how does it work?
We open for U-pick hours.
We set the hours weekly, and it's a set hours. It's open hours. Anybody can come when we're open for U-pick. We only have the appointments for the animals, just to space people out, so that we're not overwhelming any.
We post our hours on Sunday, and then they're every night we open. We only open in the evenings whenever it's hot, because the flowers don't do well being picked in the heat of the day. So tonight we open at 5, and we hope to have just a steady stream of people coming to pick flowers.
Very nice. Hopefully. So then you got a few other things that you're selling. So just trying to offer as many things as possible when they come. And you've got your salt that you've created with the different herbs that you grow, and some merch.
We've got salves in the basket.
And I'm sure it's an ever-growing line of different things that you want to make.
Locally made ice cream and root beer from Missouri.
Oh, smart.
And our locally grown pumpkin selection.
Nice.
Because it's September,
so
some of
the so you're also incorporating some other local farms goods as well. I loved that.
Yeah, when we have our store set up, which we eventually want to set up in this building, we want to carry all local and Missouri.
Neat. That's great. And then you got so you're using for point of sale, you're using the square system. and that's worked out really well for you. And
yes, it's the only downside is that we're outside and it has to be plugged in.
And it has to be plugged in. So you're purchasing these winter squash, and then you're adding some of your dried flowers?
Yeah, to make a
and then upselling.
cutesy product.
Cool. So then this is
and
nice.
We bought the squash in bulk locally from
yeah.
another farm, so it brings down the cost for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's a nice fall decoration.
Flowers and plants that we grew.
Yeah.
And then dried.
I love that. I think that's such a great thing to do. It's something that I did for in my market garden. I had to focus on the most profitable things, so I stopped growing carrots. But everyone loves carrots on a table, so I ended up buying them from a friend who grows using the same methods. And then, yeah, so I think that's such a good way to team up with other local farmers. You're helping other
really
businesses.
Can't
you're
grow
just
everything.
No, and you're helping each other. You're promoting each other's business.
And people told us
awesome.
the last 2 years, they just kept asking why we didn't have pumpkins, and I'm like, I guess we'll get pumpkins.
Yeah.
They just.
But we really don't have the.
We just don't have the space,
right?
Energy, and all that to grow this many, especially this many varieties. Like there's so many little different colors and everything. We can buy that bundle from a local grower, and everybody wins.
Yeah, listen to your customers and give them what they want. You know, they're expecting a farm has pumpkins in the fall, apparently, right? Everyone thinks so.
They also
and I'm
want
really
corn
excited
mazes, and we just said no.
You know,
yeah.
we're not
They
doing
can't do it all.
corn mazes,
We had to put our
sorry.
foot down on that.
Yeah, but we'll bring out some hay bales and stack pumpkins on them and make our little photo op thing. And,
perfect.
And I'm really excited to do piglets and pumpkins in October.
Is that the event name?
Awesome?
Piglets and pumpkins.
Yeah,
I love
it's a
it.
thing. I'm making it a thing. I don't know that anybody else does that, but we'll put the pumpkins and the piglets all together and the cute pictures, and it'll be awesome.
Very cool. I love it.
I don't know who associates piglets with fall, but it's going to happen.
Lots of great ideas.
Well,
Thank you.
That is like a lot of what we've done. Like we've made this a thing. Like around here, like nobody was doing you pick flowers, and now it's a thing. So it can be a thing if you say it is.
That's right. If somebody's trying to do this, I would recommend you get yourself a Facebook presence, but also join local groups, community groups, and make your posts not only on your page, but in those community groups, so that people who are frequenting those groups to find out what's going in their town, in your town, all the towns around you, will see your content. Because, I mean, the more you're out there, the better.
Yeah.
And the other thing with that is collect email addresses.
Yes.
Because, you can't depend on Facebook, even though email doesn't always work better. At least you have something.
Yes.
If your customers leave Facebook, you can still reach them.